And we're live. Welcome, everybody. You might notice a slightly different setup we got here right now. I'm currently in Herzliya. Herzliya is a city right north of Tel Aviv. I came to Tel Aviv for the weekend. Currently on a boat. My dad actually lives on a boat. It's his home, so I'm here. Interestingly, Herzliya was named after Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern Zionism. Anywho, I just saw that the debate dropped. I wasn't planning on streaming today, but I saw that the Dave Smith and Konstantin Kisin debate dropped. So I figured let's do a little review. This one I think is probably going to be a good matchup. Konstantin's a solid debater. John Spencer, Mehdi Hassan was a mismatch, and then Dave Smith and Natasha was also a mismatch, but that's because there was like a 2-on-1. Let's see what happens here. And there's like a motion sensor light, so you might see the light going back and forth. I hope that you don't find that too annoying. Those tuning in, let us know where you're watching from. Cool. Let's go 1.5 speed.
Nothing divides opinion more than war, and wars are often both launched and ended on the strength of popular support or opposition. When the stakes are so high and the consequences are so significant, everybody gets a say. In my view, that applies even if you haven't been to the place where it's happening. Much of the debate about the Iran crisis and others seems to boil down to some big themes: morality versus reality, idealism or pragmatism, intervention versus isolation, populists or lobbyists. For a big picture debate on a world at war, I'm joined by two of our favourite uncensored contributors who often trade respectful barbs on these matters and more. Konstantin Kisin is an author, satirist, and co-host of Trigonometry. Dave Smith is a libertarian commentator, a comedian, and the host of Part of the Problem. Well, welcome to both of you. Dave, great to have you back so soon. As you know, after your last appearance, I got chewed up and spat across cyberspace, which I found quite an amusing thing to watch go down. What did you make of it?
I mean, he kind of did deserve it. He was not a good host there. As much as Natasha is wrong about almost everything she says and is a peddler of misinformation, he shouldn't have treated her that way. So let's just put that out there.
Oh, I thought it was just so pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I had mentioned this before, but if you, as I'm sure you do recall, but after my friend Daryl Cooper was on Tucker Carlson's show and he made some comments that you objected to, and I was defending him and giving my point of view on it, you had me on a panel. It's probably the most contentious that me and you have been on the show. You had me on 3-on-1 with it was Seth Dillon and then a world-renowned historian from the House of Lords, you know, like the leading expert.
He actually is, Andrew Roberts, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I took my lumps. I tried to make my argument as compelling as I could. It was I didn't go online and just throw a bitch fest for the next week over how unfair it was. It's just pathetic. And I'm sorry, but Natasha was just lying through her teeth the whole time. And and Liza, as you...
That's true. She was lying through her teeth, but still, the second you interrupt her that much, that just becomes what people focus about. Like, he should have just let Dave Smith debunk her lies and destroy her, and then people wouldn't have had something to say. She would have been destroyed. I mean, there still would have been copium. They would have found excuses for it. But I mean, here it took away from the substance of the debate, and no one really was able to focus on Natasha just spreading blatant misinformation.
Pointed out, insult the intelligence of the host and the viewers, and I thought you were absolutely right to give her pushback for that. So it was, I thought, number one, I thought you were right on the show. Obviously, admittedly, I'm a little bit biased on the topic, but I thought the reaction online was just truly embarrassing.
You know what was interesting? If they'd actually just said to me, you know what, Piers, did you go a little bit too far in the interrupting? Could you have reined back 10, 20%? I probably would have said yes, probably. I conceded that to some friends of mine. Yeah, probably slightly overdid it. My mother's always a good litmus test. She was like, you did go...
Good self-reflection, but he probably overdid it by like 30, 40%, let's be honest, if not 50%. Anyway.
Better a bit, you know, I was like, okay. But then I was reminded that she was telling massive whoppers with real consequential elements to them, denying, you know, appalling things like the killing of the 9 out of 10 children in that one airstrike and so on, or at least trying to cast doubt over whether it had been proven, which I just found so reprehensible. But also, I just felt this is somebody who purports to be an international barrister in this area, who's clearly not has got a horse in the race, right? Because it's lawyers for Israel, who she represents. If you can't handle a bit of interrupting from someone like me, you're probably in the wrong profession, is what I thought. It's like it's supposed to be part of your job, literally arguing with people, often in an animated way. Anyway, let's get into this argument, because this was precipitated. For those who don't follow you guys as assiduously as I do, and I'm a big fan of both of you.
I'm hearing from Harry Potter that the stream's a little laggy. Is anybody else seeing that?
Konstantin, you called out Dave on X for accusing the actor Rob Schneider of talking with confidence on topics he doesn't necessarily understand. You said that's exactly what Douglas Murray had accused Dave of doing when they had a spat on Joe Rogan. And you said, on X, I'm not trying to be a dick, but this is exactly what Douglas was saying to you. He was saying you talk about things you don't understand with a level of confidence that is inappropriate, and you pretended he was calling for censorship. You can't have it both ways. Okay, you've got Dave sitting here. You don't want to be a dick, which I appreciate because I've had a festival of that from George Galloway this week. So let's not get into dick measurement contests. But this whole argument really about people who are supposedly ill-equipped to talk about things, whether it's Dave because he's a comedian by stock in trade, whether it's Rob Schneider, whether it's anyone really. Explain where you come from on that.
Well, first of all, you say it's been precipitated by this. I think the disagreements between Dave and I run about as long as the Iran-Israel conflict, so and probably longer. So we disagree on a lot of stuff. You've invited me on your show many, many times over the last year. I've always said no when talking about this stuff because I don't consider myself an expert on these issues, which is why I've consistently turned it down. The only reason I'm here tonight, by the way, is you said to me, I'm not going on your show until you come back on mine, and I thought that was actually fair enough. So particularly given that you have me here with somebody who's also not an expert, this is essentially two guys in a bar, in a pub, chatting about their opinions. So that's fine. However, I think the reality is that an issue of this complexity and seriousness.
I mean, there's just a problem with this framing. Like, we're not experts. The thing is, who are the experts on Israel-Palestine? Who's the experts on Israel-Gaza conflict? Like, is John Spencer, is he an expert? Is Natasha an expert? Like, some of the greatest peddlers of misinformation are the ones who are considered the experts. So I'd be interested in hearing from Konstantin, who are the experts we should be listening to? Aside from myself, obviously, but, you know. People are saying it's laggy. That inner video looks vague. You seem fine. Okay, that's okay. Well, as long as y'all can hear coming in. And then Superpower Indy says your favorite live is on. Cool. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks.
Not be addressed by a former comedian and a current comedian. I don't really think that's the right approach. But my point to Dave is something else. My point to Dave is whenever he wants to take a shortcut and disagree with someone who's saying something that's different to him, he will resort to exactly the same thing that Douglas said to him, which is you actually don't really know what you're talking about. You don't have the expertise to talk about this. You haven't been to the region. You haven't read enough. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. And that's exactly what Douglas was saying to Dave. Now, you can agree or disagree with whether that's right or wrong, but the fact that Dave is violating his own standards, it seems to me to be pretty hypocritical.
Dave, you're a rank hypocrite.
That's what Piers saying and not me. I did not add the word rank.
Yeah, you would have done
Okay,
if you thought about it.
No, I'm sorry. There's for the record, I just want to say me and Rob Schneider made up. I've always been a big fan of his. We message back and forth and we're cool. But no, I'm sorry. Obviously, this is ridiculous and there's no hypocrisy here at all. It is if we were to come to a debate and what I brought to the debate was I just said, shut up. And that was all I did for the debate, was just tell you to shut up. And I had no argument, and I didn't counter any of your arguments, but I just told you to shut up. And you were to say, yeah, that was a really ridiculous way to debate. And then I pointed out that you had also told someone to shut up once in your life. That wouldn't mean you're guilty of hypocrisy. It's a completely different standard to be dismissive to someone on Twitter than to agree to debate them on the biggest show in the world, show up in front of tens of millions of people, and your argument essentially is just to dismiss them. Your point doesn't matter. So no, and also, clearly, I wasn't telling Rob Schneider because he's a comedian, he can't have an opinion on this. I was telling him that I don't really think he knows what he's talking about on this issue. And then which
is exactly what Douglas said to you.
Yes, but he didn't back it up with anything. That's the point. No one would have had a problem. The whole
that's not the same accusation. Like Douglas Murray saying, "You've never been. You know, like that's a form of ad hominem, right? It's trying to discredit his argument and his position on Israel-Palestine because he's never been. But if he told Rob Schneider, "You have no idea what you're talking about," that's not on the basis of some identity. He listened to his argument and reached that conclusion. It's very different.
The whole point was that Douglas had an opportunity to demonstrate his superior level of expertise and did not. And this is the overwhelming opinion.
Well, I don't think that's quite true. I think on a lot of the subjects you debated, he actually did give very good reasons why he disagreed. Now, as you remember, I wrote an article at the time.
Just so you all know, right, just for context, and I'm bummed I didn't do a more thorough debunking of this. On the Douglas Murray, Dave Smith debate on Joe Rogan, I counted, I think it was around 15 points of misinformation Douglas spread. Either misinformation or just misleading framings. Dave Smith, I think, said 2 to 3 things that were factually incorrect. But like in terms of who was spreading far more misinformation, I mean, it was worlds apart. And I'm bummed I didn't do, I did do a debunking here on stream, but not a thorough enough one. And kind of regret not doing more because no one else did it. And it was like, actually, that's not true. People wrote articles. But I think there's still not enough public awareness about how much misinformation Douglas Murray spreads. It's like endless misinformation. It's zero attempt to try to describe reality for what it is. Like even, I'll just give one clear example. I heard a friend of mine is reading his book. Shout out Kaizen. I don't know if you all know Kaizen. He does some good commentary he's a friend from LA, but he told me in the book that Douglas Murray mentioned how on October 7th that a woman got the baby cut out of her stomach. But that we now know that's not true. Like that was some rumor that was spreading, and we know for sure that did not happen on October 7th. Douglas Murray had no problem publishing that in his book. I mean, so and that's just one claim. There's dozens such claims.
Talking about that situation, I did concede that I thought Douglas should have lent more into the arguments. The way you and I have always debated has been on that basis, right? And I think that is true. But I don't think this argument about Twitter really works, because when you go on our mutual friends Joe Rogan show, you're in front of millions of people. When you and I are exchanging, or you and Rob are exchanging arguments on X, we're also in front of millions of people. We're also having a debate. I don't understand what the difference is.
You don't understand the difference between like dismissing someone on Twitter and agreeing to debate them and showing up with
Rob
nothing but
made a series
them?
of arguments on Twitter to you in front of those same millions of people that saw you on Joe Rogan, and instead of addressing his arguments with counter arguments, which is the standard that you normally apply and you demand that other people apply to you, you instead basically said, shut up, Rob, you don't know what you're talking about.
Piers,
just because you read one book doesn't mean you know what you're talking about, which is exactly what a lot of people said to you, and you got very upset about it and pretended they were trying to censor you.
No, okay. There's a couple different things here. Number one, Piers, as I told you, I think I believe, were my first appearance after the Douglas Murray debate on Joe Rogan. And the first thing I said to you was that I go, look, there's been a lot of people who have been challenged to debates who say, I'm not going to debate that guy. He's beneath me. I've done that with other people. And then there's been people who accept and show up to the debate. I said, Douglas Murray's fatal flaw was that he did both. He accepted and then showed up and said, I'm above you. I shouldn't even be debating you. And it backfired on him. Now, as far as I'm sorry, what was your second point there? I had another response to that. What was the other thing you said, Konstantin?
I don't remember the sequence of the points that I made. What do you mean exactly?
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna save you both, because I think we've probably dealt with the element about whether you should be debating or talking about these things. You're both here to talk about stuff. Enough about 9 to 5. What about the most important bit? And Gary would cozy. You were 40%. Cozy. Donald Trump.
I mean, yeah, I did address it. It's slightly it's not the same thing, right? The way Douglas Murray did it was like in a formal debate, and on the basis of his identity, on the basis of the fact that he'd never been there, he tried to discredit his argument. That's not the same as being in like a Twitter fight with somebody and being frustrated and say, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. Not the same type of dismissal.
You believe has played an absolute blinder in the Middle East. Dave, to put it mildly, does not agree and thinks he should now be impeached for betrayal. So first of all, Konstantin, why in your estimation has Trump played an absolute blinder?
Just to put this in context, I said this, I think, on Friday. I spent that week when these initial strikes happened in Washington, D.C. And the point that I was making is, I don't think that, certainly none of the people I met in Washington, D.C. with any insider knowledge thought that Benjamin Netanyahu had ordered these strikes without at least a wink and a nod from President Trump. So President Trump is doing something that, from what I remember, he said it between 30 and 40 times on the campaign trail, which is Iran must not be allowed to get a bomb. And he's achieving that outcome while not taking any of the blame or any of the flag for it. That was the case on Friday. Obviously, the situation has evolved since then, and there's now a much bigger debate. But at that time, he had absolutely played a blinder in allowing Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli military to achieve the military objective, while also sort of claiming that he's not involved and kind of at that time.
To achieve the military objective is not quite true. We don't know if the military objective has been reached. We don't know if this will. There's this assumption that these attacks are what are going to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. I think there's a strong case to be made that this will increase the chance that they ultimately get a nuclear weapon, because history shows that when they get attacked, when we do anti-diplomatic things with Iran, they actually get closer to building the bomb. Now, it could actually set them back technically, but it very well may increase their motivation to do so. So is what Israel is currently doing decrease the chance that Iran has a nuclear weapon in the next decade? I don't think that's at all obvious. People are presenting it as if that's very obviously the case.
Gets involved, as the jungle drum seemed to be suggesting. That is a massive moment for Donald Trump, I would say. I mean, you could argue that is the most important decision he will have taken as a president, and maybe the most important decision he ever takes. If he actually starts bombing with American forces, Iran, that is a massive thing to be doing. Do you think it's, as Tucker Carlson says, something that could imperil his presidency?
We are in the unknown, so nobody knows how this is going to play out. I think we should all be honest about that and be fair. What I think it really fundamentally depends on is what you mean by the word involved. If you mean that America is going to help Israel shoot down ballistic missiles, I don't know that will be such a major decision or will be seen.
Let me paint a picture where they use a B-52 bomber and they drop one of these buster bombs to try and get to the nuclear sites that the Israelis can't get to because they haven't got that technology. If they were to do that, in other words, directly use American forces to do the bombing, would your calculation about Trump change?
These are all hypotheticals. Because the one thing that I do know, and I think Dave will tell you this himself, is the thing that people in the United States, from talking to people there, are most concerned about is any sort of boots on the ground scenario. They do not want American soldiers in the Middle East. I think they're right not to. I genuinely think that. And so fundamentally, it really depends on what happens and the way that it happens. And you're right, it is a big decision. But I think it's, all this stuff, I mean, Dave's calling for President Trump to be impeached over this, when this is something that he promised the American people 30 to 40 times on the campaign.
Well, okay, but on that, I would clarify that. He said that number of times that Iran should not be allowed to have a nuclear bomb. That is indisputable. He also has consistently portrayed himself as a man who wants peace, not war. I'm going to solve the problem in Ukraine, solve the Middle East, and so on. This would go against all of his claims to be that person. And of course, the big debate behind all this is that Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of national intelligence, the IAEA director last night, they both said in very recent times, including 24 hours ago, in the case of the Atomic Agency, that there is no evidence that they've seen that Iran is anywhere near progressing to an actual nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah, so let's explain that a little bit more. So what is really all this about? There's many components to actually building a nuclear weapon. One is having enough enriched uranium, and the other is being able to actually, like, the weaponization process, being able to take that uranium and turn it into a bomb that is essentially a nuke. So Iran was never weapons grade uranium is 90% enriched. For nuclear energy, you only need to enrich it to 3.5%, and then there's some other purposes to enrich it to 20%, and for medical purposes, etc. Until 2021, they were not enriching past 20%. And until Trump ended the agreement in 2018, the agreement that was signed under Obama in 2013, they weren't enriching past 3.5%. And they started enriching to 60% only after Israel attacked their the Natanz plan in 2021. So clear history of them increasing enrichment as a result of attack. Now you could say, why are they doing this? This can be seen as them wanting to get closer to having a nuclear weapon if they want to. But other people, and I think there's a strong case to be made that this is used as leverage, negotiating leverage, because they're getting sanctioned for. They were being sanctioned even for enriching just 3.5%, just for having a nuclear weapons program. Nuclear energy program. So there's a strong case to be made that this can be seen as just negotiating leverage. But I think you could also make the case, even if this is negotiating leverage, it's reckless behavior. It increases the chance they're going to get attacked. So in the past 2 years, they increased enrichment significantly to 60%, which is just a step below having it at 90%. And this is when those are saying they're close to having a bomb, this is essentially what they're looking at. They're looking at the level. They have enough enriched uranium to build 10 nuclear bombs, right? That's the assessment. But there's a process then to weaponize it. And we don't have any evidence of them being anywhere on the weaponization process. All we know is that from 1999 to 2003, they had some kind of a weapons program that they were testing, and they dropped it in 2003. Coincided with the invasion of Iraq, interestingly. Maybe they didn't want any trouble. And as far as we know, there's been no credible intel suggesting otherwise, that they have some kind of a weapons program. So that's the kind of divide you hear between people saying, yeah, they're so close, and others saying, wait a minute, they're not close. So IAEA and Tulsi Gabbard are saying we don't have any evidence of the weaponization, but we do know that the IAEA is also saying that they are enriching a fair bit amount to 60%.
That's the key point of this.
So I like Tulsi Gabbard. We've had her on Trigonometry. I think she's a great human being, which is why I did her the courtesy of watching the full clip of her testimony that she gave. And what she says in that testimony is that Iran is not pursuing the nuclear weapons program. But what Iran is doing is enriching uranium to 60% and beyond, which is a clear indication of their desire either to actually make nuclear weapons or to move much, much closer to a position to be able to make them. As I think Dave would concede from all the nuclear scientists, what they're saying is you need about 3 to 5% enriched uranium for civilian purposes. They are now enriching uranium to 60%. And by the way, this is also in the IAEA report, and no one's talking about this.
Yep, exactly.
Using their 20% uranium to make 60% uranium, which is again an indicator of the fact that they're moving either towards attempting to make nuclear weapons at some point or to be in a position to do so. And that is the threat. And there is no other reason for them to be doing that. So yes, they don't have the exact bomb ready to go, but they're moving in that direction. And Israel is in a position to deal with that threat for the first time in a very long time. And I understand why they're doing it.
Okay, Dave, before we get to your response to that, just explain to people why you have called.
And look, I mean, that is fair. Like saying I can understand why Israel's doing that. I mean, let's steelman Israel's position, right? Iran has made it clear that they think Israel should not exist. They often say death to America, death to Israel. They have not said we plan to destroy Israel or we will nuke Israel. Like many people misinterpret their quotes, but they have said the Zionist regime should fall or it's a cancer that should be wiped off the face of the earth. There's different quotes that suggest they do not want Israel to exist. The thought of a country like that having nuclear weapons is terrifying for Israelis, rightfully, you know. So this is the Israeli position on it. It's like, look, if we need to do a preemptive strike to stop them from getting a nuke, I'm fully for that. So that's the majority of that's the position of the majority of the Israelis, as well as the Israeli government.
Called what Donald Trump is doing a betrayal, and why you think he should be impeached?
Well, I think he has brought us into a war with Iran. Now, how much this war escalates, we will see. And I think that this is it is the most profoundly risky and reckless policy he could have pursued, or just about. I think this is very likely going to lead to a catastrophe, much like all of the other terror wars, including the one, Piers, that you heroically led the opposition in the UK to in 2003, of course, referring to the war in Iraq. And as you remember...
Interestingly, I didn't know that he was... Okay. I always took Piers as more of an establishment guy, but it's cool to see that even in 2023 he was against Iraq.
Piers from that war. The justifications just kept constantly changing. And then when one fell away, they'd move to the next one. Oh, he was in on 9/11. Okay, he wasn't in on 9/11, but he's got weapons of mass destruction. Okay, he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, but we have to liberate the people or bring democracy. And I've already seen that it's remarkable how sped up it is. I've already seen so many of the war hawks bouncing back and forth between all of these different justifications. But of course, in the end there, all of the justifications failed. Not only did he not have weapons of mass destruction, not only was he not in on 9/11, but we also didn't liberate the people. The worst thing that ever happened to the people of Iraq was George W. Bush's war there. And as far as Iran enriching up to 60%, yes, it's true that they only need, I think, between 3 to 5% for civilian nuclear purposes, and maybe something like around 20 to 25% for some medical needs. But that is what is known as a latent nuclear deterrent. There is another reason why they would have that. They want to demonstrate that they can get the bomb, but they don't have it right now to stop something like this happening. But the bottom line is that since 2000,
yeah, that's also fair. Like they're saying, don't test us, don't play with fire. But that is them in themselves playing with fire, right? As we see.
2007, our CIA has said they don't have nuclear weapons and they're not striving to achieve them. Tulsi Gabbard, not only in her testimony, but in the Director of National Intelligence as her capacity serving that role in the annual threat assessment just put out a couple months ago, reaffirmed the same thing. And so is the global community. Iran has been willing to negotiate this entire time. And maybe the negotiations haven't been successful, but even Benjamin Netanyahu, in his interview with Brett Baer the other day, couldn't even manage to lie and say that they've broken out and they're pursuing. He said maybe a year. The same thing he's been saying since I was 7 years old, lying over and over and over again because he wants a regime change war here. And he said this in his...
Right. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you all saw the video. They put a compilation of Netanyahu calling for, since 1995, saying they're a few years away from getting a bomb. So for 30 years, he's been saying this. And also, interestingly, like Iran, you know, after the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s, Iraq used chemical weapons on Iran, and Iran still didn't create a chemical weapons program in response. And interestingly, they cited Islam as a reason why they don't. They say these are indiscriminate weapons, and you know that's against Islam. That's their same public justification for not building nukes. They say it's against Islam. You don't need to take their word for it, but this is how they're describing it.
Own words, and so have all of the neoconservatives. Look, right here on your show, Piers, which I think might be the most fascinating moment in the history of Uncensored, when General Wesley Clark reaffirmed that not only had he seen the plans to overthrow 7 countries in 5 years, but that it went all the way back to the early 90s, and that it was revived, in his words, in a study paid for by the Israelis. They've gotten the 6 other ones. This is the 7th one. This war is not about nukes that Iran doesn't have. And just one more point I would make, as the great Scott Horton said the other day. Look, I mean, even if they were developing nukes, which they're not, you know, Truman knew that the Soviets were developing nukes. He didn't launch an aggressive war against them for it. And Johnson knew that Mao Zedong was developing nukes. He still didn't launch an aggressive war against the country. And the point is that you could sit here and say, just like they did with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, you could sit here and say, no, we're just going to have a no-fly zone. We won't have boots on the ground. We won't have this. Look, Iran has already demonstrated, in a few days that this war has been going on, that they're more capable than all of the other countries we picked on in the terror wars. They've already hit Israel and killed people there. What's going to happen when a few Americans get killed? Hopefully this doesn't. But what's going to happen?
So that's interesting. That's not quite sure. So Iran is actually proving less capable than many predicted, including Israel. Israel thought there would be higher casualties and they'd be more effective. That said, Iran has proven more capable than many other militaries that Israel have fought. Just testament to the fact that the airport's been closed now since the start. No other country has been able to close Israeli airport for a significant amount of time. And also you see some of the destruction of the infrastructure here. I mean, they're definitely hitting Israel with some pretty high powered explosives, but based on what was expected, it is less than that. So it's important to keep that in mind. And another thing, I think that like boots on the ground seems highly implausible. There is a middle ground, right? The U.S. can come in and help with airstrikes, use the B-52 to get Fordo Center. They could very easily like be involved in a minor way without boots on the ground. Boots on the ground, I don't even think sounds highly implausible. I don't think anybody wants to take that on because it'll be very deadly for anyone who tries. You know, Alexander the Great tried. Genghis Khan tried. Iran's not easy to conquer. It's kind of like Afghanistan. But so I don't think it's exactly comparable to Iraq. I don't think it's being described in the same way. But that said, if the U.S. does get involved, there very well could be repercussions to U.S. allies in like the Sunni Gulf allies, right? There could certainly still be some cost to going in. And also, I think Trump's base is split. I think at least half the base is very much against any type of intervention at this point.
Happen if that happens? What do you think Donald Trump's going to do?
Many of us carry around bulky, worn-out wallets that are uncomfortable and full of junk. The big question is why. Ridge wallets can hold 12 cards plus cash with zero bulk. They're made from premium materials like aluminum to take like and ears, PIERS. So please, Konstantin, your response to that.
Don't forget to get your Ridge wallet.
Well, it's fascinating. So the Iranians are willing to negotiate, but the negotiations aren't going anywhere. That's a very strange way of looking at it. Look,
No, dude, come on. That's not good faith. We saw them negotiate a deal under Obama. Sometimes negotiations take time. Sometimes you need to meet in the middle. Like, them not being as successful as you'd like them to be does not mean you just start bombing. Like, I don't think we should be so quick to bomb. We should really, really try to negotiate. You know, I think many people also like in Israel use a similar argument. It's like, oh, we tried Oslo, it failed, so now we're just going to continue a forever occupation and status quo. No, if negotiations don't work, you continue.
There's so much to address there. First of all, you've got to think about this and understand this from an Israeli perspective in the situation. A lot of people think that Israel has just launched the war in Iran. That's not how Israel sees this at all. Israel has been at war with Iran since October the 7th, when an Iranian proxy, Hamas, attacked them. On October the 8th, an Iranian proxy, Hezbollah, began to fire rockets into Israel. Then the Houthis, another Iranian proxy, began to attack shipping and also Israel, right? Now, what has happened?
So I take issue with this framing. Iran, Hamas and Hezbollah being an Iran proxy, in a sense, yes, like the Iran funds them and supports them, but it's not like they exist solely because of Iran. It's very possible that without any Iranian support, you would still have October 7th. You'd still have Hezbollah. They don't exist solely because of Iran, so you can't blame them solely for their existence. You know, the fact that there is a militant resistance group fighting their oppression makes sense. This generally in situations of prolonged occupation and land theft, you get violent resistance groups. Hezbollah was created as a result of Israel invading Lebanon, right? So these organizations did not come out of the blue. They weren't invented by Iran. They exist prior to Iran. So that's just not the correct framing. Iran certainly strengthens their existence, but it's important to keep in mind that their existence is not dependent on Iran.
Happened since then is Israel has eliminated those threats to was going to say deballed, but decapitated Hezbollah. They dealt with the threat of Hamas, and they are now in a position to deal with the threat they've always been concerned about. Now, why is Israel so concerned about this? Well, first of all, Iran has been saying for a very long time they don't want regime change in Israel. They want the state of Israel not to exist. Now, think about the fact that in the post-October 7 world, they cannot take the risk that they're only enriching uranium to 60% because they want to threaten to have nuclear weapons. That is not something they can do. And by the way, Piers, there's something that people don't seem to understand about. You know, we struggle in the West. I really do think we all struggle in the West to understand the fundamentalist mindset. And let me give you an example of what the regime in Iran is like so that we can all understand what the threat here is. After the Islamic Revolution happened in Iran in 79, the war broke out between Iran and Iraq. And in that war, Iran was at a disadvantage. It was militarily backward. It wasn't financially able to deal with that. You know what they did? They attempted to mitigate that by recruiting as many child soldiers as they could. We don't know how many because they didn't bother to count, but it's hundreds of thousands. And because some of them were too young and too weak to fight, they didn't send them to the front line. They sent them to sweep minefields with their own bodies. That is what this regime does. Now, if those people are willing to do that to their own children, 9, 10...
Is that right? I mean, it's possible, but I don't trust Konstantin enough to just take that. Hold on, I need to fact check that. And the problem is even using like a Western-built LLM to get the exact truth, because it's going to have some anti-East bias. But let's see. Okay, so Child Soldiers Global Report by Child Soldiers International State of Boys. Okay, yeah, it's saying this. Arab News described countless young boys forced to run across minefields. Hold on, I'm going to ask a friend as well who would know this pretty well. And I'll get back to you when he gets back to you. Okay, we'll get back there if we could confirm it to be true. But at least from a quick search on ChatGPT, it is showing a few sites saying that this is the case. Eyewitness testimony and historical accounts. Children were charging across the minefield to make a path for the real soldiers. Interesting. I guess if it's life or death, that's what you do. But that's fucked.
10, 11, 12-year-olds. What do you think they would do to the children of their enemies if they get a nuclear weapon, or if they get close to, or if they're allowed to continue funding proxies around the Middle East in order to attack Israel, as they've already done?
Dave Smith.
Okay, can I respond to some of this, Piers? Because as I always insist when I come on your show, ironically, I get called a moral relativist when I criticize Israel, but I'm the one who's always asking for an objective standard here that we can judge all sides on. Because it's just, yeah, you can just focus on the horrible things that Iran did in the 1980 war with Iraq, which Saddam Hussein launched, and the U.S. backed Saddam Hussein as he was using chemical weapons. And
so that justifies using children to walk into minefields?
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Okay, so what are you
saying? My point here. Instead of just strawmanning, well, I was about to say, so let me finish it. Okay, by the way, Israel never killed any children, as you know, Piers, right? They have the most.
Israel is not sending its own children into minefields. It's a massive difference.
Constantine, let me finish my point, and then you can respond to it and see if you can take it on. Now, when you sit here and say that they've been at war with Iran since October 7th because Hamas is their proxies, what exactly, proxy means that I would think you have operational control over them or something like that.
Well, actually, let me explain.
Okay, he's pushing the point that I said. Let's see how this goes.
What I think that means, because I've been arguing that point in terms of understanding where Israel comes from on this, which is there can be no doubt, I don't think, Dave, you would cast doubt on this, that Iran has financially and militarily given active and sustained support for a number of years to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, and to Hamas. I mean, you wouldn't dispute that.
Right. So, Piers, then by your logic and Konstantin's logic, is Israel our proxy? They just attacked Iran. Well,
I would say that Israel is actually, you could well argue, given the amount of support that America gives Israel militarily and...
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. Israel is a U.S. proxy to the same extent that Hamas is an Iranian proxy. It's not full control. It doesn't exist because of those nations. So I think it's a similar... It's a good comparison.
Economically, yes. I think.
Fine.
One person's ally is another person's proxy.
Can I make some points on this?
Hold on. Let me just...
Yeah, so I think ally, proxy.
One person's ally is another person's proxy. I like that.
Dave, I'm very happy to hear counter-argument. Can I just flesh out Piers' point a little bit, if that's okay? So here's what we know. According to the State Department's own figures, Iran gives Hamas about $100 million a year. Latest figures. They've been funding Hamas since the early 1990s. Yahya Sinwar said in 2017 that Iran is the single biggest military and financial backer of Hamas's military wing. In September 2020,
but you need to understand, 100 million is not that much. I mean, Israel gets $3.5 billion from the United States. I mean, that's 35 times as much. So
a month before October the 7th. 500 Hamas fighters and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fighters were being trained by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard abroad. I can't remember if it's in Lebanon or in Iran proper. And there are numerous chronicled, documented meetings between senior commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Hamas and Hezbollah fighters in the lead up to it. What do you think they were doing? Talking about world peace and swapping hummus recipes? This is something that they've been involved in very heavily, and they continue to be involved in. And Hamas and Hezbollah are the sword hanging over Israel's neck that Iran has used in order to prevent the very thing that's happening now.
Right?
Okay, so to be clear here, it's an outrage that Iran has sold weapons and given money to Hamas, and therefore Hamas is their proxy. Yet as we all know, Piers, and me and you have discussed this, 2 weeks before October 7th, Benjamin Netanyahu sends the head of Mossad to Qatar to make sure that the funding to Hamas continues. Yet, is Hamas now a proxy of Israel? Is Israel at war with itself?
Well, I think on that point, I certainly think that Benjamin Netanyahu, when this is all over, is going to have a monumental day of reckoning, not just in the corruption courts, but I think he's going to have a monumental day of reckoning about how he allowed this to happen on his watch, how Mossad so spectacularly dropped the ball. No one can give me a good explanation for why they can carry out this kind of attack on Hezbollah.
No, this isn't a Mossad failure. It's a Shabak. Mossad is equivalent to the CIA. Shabak is equivalent to the FBI. In terms of dealing with Gaza stuff, that's primarily the Shabak and other intelligence units within the Israeli military.
With the pages and carry out so precise an attack in Iraq.
And you might sometimes hear Shin Bet, Shabak. Those are the same. If you want to understand why, Shabak is like the word. Shin is a letter. Bet is a letter. That kind of Shabak, Shin Bet. I don't know if I made that clear, but that's why there's two names.
Wrong, but didn't apparently know that Hamas was spending 20 years.
It would be equivalent like Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. There we go.
Is building a tunnel system and didn't know 3,000 of them were about to pour over the border. I will never defend Netanyahu in this. I think he's going to be a busted flush. I suspect he sees this attack on Iran as being a chance to avoid being a busted flush for a little longer than it might have been the case. But there's going to be a day of reckoning for him. And the fact that he actively encouraged billions of dollars to be funneled to Hamas to create a divide and rule strategy between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority has also turned out to be one of the most catastrophically wrong things that an Israeli leader could possibly have done. So, look, that's where I sit with Netanyahu.
None of this makes Hamas an Israel proxy. Right?
Okay, fine. Well, yeah, I mean, it did kind of by the
They're
definition.
not the primary source of their funding or support.
Okay, fine. Okay, it's got to be primary, just being, okay, fine, whatever. Anyway, the point is this, right? Obviously, right now, Israel has taken out much of the Hezbollah leadership. The Houthis have been bombed. I think there's still a bit of a problem for them. They've been absolutely leveling Gaza. And so they think this is the moment. And of course, Bashar al-Assad fell as well. So now they think this is the moment for regime change in Iran. It's the same reason why people like Ben Shapiro were celebrating when Bashar al-Assad fell. Now the Shiite crescent is no longer supplying weapons from Iran to Hezbollah. But I'm not an Israeli. I'm an American. I'm not cheering when the emir of Al-Qaeda takes over in Syria. And listen, whatever you put the risk at here, which if this thing keeps escalating, the risk of this going to a real ground war, another war in the war on terrorism, let me be very clear when I say this. I don't know that America will survive this. We went into the terror wars in a much stronger place than we're going into this one. And this is a much tougher opponent than Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi. We didn't go into the terror wars $37 trillion in debt. We didn't go into the terror wars with the cultural and political and racial divides. We have mass protests in the streets right now over Donald Trump trying to enforce his immigration policy. This is going to be, this has the potential to be an utter disaster. And why should any American or British person, for that matter, why should any of us support this war? Because Israel thinks it's in their interest. Israel has attacked.
Well, I would argue. I would argue it's not just in Israel's interest. I think Iran is an evil regime that oppresses its people, that has funded terrorism.
So was Saddam Hussein.
Well, yeah, I agree. But in Saddam Hussein's case, I never believed.
Saddam Hussein never funded terrorism.
Well, I never believed that Saddam Hussein had WMD. I think the difference
there was no terrorism in Iraq until we got rid of Saddam, actually.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, that's where the owner, IRS, is a problem. Will they escalate? That's IRS.
I'm not even sure that's true that Saddam never funded terrorism. It's possible he had some stuff going on. Yes, Saddam Hussein regime did fund terrorism both directly and indirectly. Here's a breakdown. Funded Palestinian militias. There were martyrs' payments. Saddam is well documented, paid families of Palestinian suicide bombers. Okay, yeah. Support for Arab national groups. Saddam supported various pan-Arab and Ba'athist-aligned movements, some of which engaged in terrorism. Alleged connections to Al-Qaeda after 9/11. Some U.S. alleged, that's bullshit. That's some U.S. alleged there were ties, but I'm not buying that. That sounds like war justification. But okay, so he seems to have funded something. Greg says that comparing the funding is very much different. Israel receives credit from the U.S. for defense, while Iran funding for attack. No, they're not very much different. It's credits that they need to then spend on weapons from U.S. companies. So it's essentially a subsidy for the U.S. war companies, but you call it defense, but it's to maintain a brutal military occupation in the West Bank. And there's many ways to engage in self-defense, and killing over 16,000 children is not an acceptable one in most people's minds. So that's done with American weapons.
I think you can't hold any truck for this Iranian regime. I think a lot of Iranian people would agree with that. I think they would love to get rid of them. I think that Israel has every right to feel threatened by Iran's tentacles in the way they supported 3 different terror groups right on their border. So I'm not saying that you're not right, that this might all backfire.
Let me just ask you,
I'm not saying it may not backfire. I'm just saying I do understand why
Yeah.
Israel has decided to do it now. I think they sense that Iran's regime has never been weaker because of what's happened in Syria, because of what happened to Hezbollah. You know, what's been the most significant moment of the last week? Probably Hezbollah saying we're not getting involved in this, right? So, I mean, that to me was a very significant moment, and that may well have emboldened not just Israel to continue pummeling Iran, but also may have emboldened Trump to think, well, actually, if we're ever going to deal with this regime, now is the moment. Now, that's not to say, Dave, that you're not right, that this could all backfire horrendously. And if America gets sucked into a ground war, then it will be a complete nightmare. I've got no doubt about that.
Yes, but would you concede, though, that if you allow Iran to enrich uranium, that also could backfire?
Yes, right? I was about to say that. And also I was about to say that Russia is now making pretty worrying noises that if America gets involved, it's not going to tolerate it. So you can't ignore that, given what's happening in Ukraine. But yeah, I think in your point...
I mean, Russia's pretty weak right now. What could they do? I mean, they definitely have a massive nuclear arsenal, but in terms of support beyond that, I don't know. Okay, interesting.
Konstantin, yes, when I saw that IAE report, I read it and I thought they'd gone from 3% to 60% uranium enrichment. And there's only one reason you would do that. Either you take Dave's view, which is they're doing that because they want to have a form of nuclear deterrent without actually having a bomb. Or if you're Israel, you're like, these people have been funding terrorism against us for decades. And now they've gone from 3% to 60%, way more than is needed for any civilian use. Clearly, they are on a fast track here to be a nuclear power. And we cannot allow that to happen. So I do, let Konstantin...
Right, so exactly. That's you could argue that they are working towards nukes. You could argue that it's acting as a deterrent without actually having nukes, or it's used as negotiating leverage. Because the timing is interesting. They started enriching much more after Trump got elected. It was clear that Trump was going to make Iran a major issue, so building up that leverage does make sense. So we could speculate as to what their motivation here was.
Respond first, but that's why I do understand
let's be honest,
why Israel feels the way it does.
Well, exactly, and let's be honest about something here, Piers. The three of us are sitting in comfortable air-conditioned studios on the other side of the world from the region where this is happening. We have the luxury to pontificate about the real reason that Iran is enriching uranium to near weapons grade. Israel does not have the ability to get this wrong and then go, well, I apologize, I got this one wrong, as Dave has done with President Trump. He supported him being elected, and now he's going, I got it wrong, guys, let's impeach him. Israel, if it gets this wrong, gets annihilated. They do not have the luxury of that.
Okay, but true, but this very well might be them getting it wrong. Like we need to acknowledge that this very well may backfire. Just like bombing is not by default the right decision because you don't want them to have nukes. It very well may increase the chance of nuclear proliferation. Because if you have a nuke, you don't get attacked. No one's touching North Korea. You don't try to invade nuclear superpowers. So it's unclear at all that this is that them just waiting around is a much greater risk than what they're actually doing. And when you look at the short-term consequences, right now we know blood is being spilt. Israeli blood's being spilt. Iranian blood's being spilt. So if you're going to spill blood, I think you need to make a very, very compelling case that you have no better alternative. We can't be seeing blood as cheap. We can't just be spilling blood because we think maybe this is the best way to do it. No, we need to exhaust all other options and really prove that we have no other option but to kill people.
Now, Dave, I think the point you make about the American people, I have the greatest respect for the American people, and they should determine the course of America themselves. They've elected Donald Trump, and that is the reality. No one here, Piers found out, I think, with some history, that Americans don't like being told what to do by foreigners, and I'm certainly not going to do that. It's up to the American people. I know the American people don't want boots on the ground, and neither do I. And neither do sensible people, I think. I think the extent of Americans' involvement should be to help Israel defend itself against the missile attacks and let them get the job done themselves. I agree with you. This is Israel's war. They should prosecute it to the best of their ability, and they should deal with the threat that they face from Iran. I don't want a massive involvement of the West. I don't think that's what we need. And by the way, just one quick point, slightly tangential, but
I do think Konstantin's right here that the whole argument that boots on the ground, I don't think anybody's talking about it, and I think it's highly implausible. I think that's the fear many Americans have because of history, but I don't think that's what's being discussed here. I think the greatest threat that if the U.S. gets involved, the greatest threat is that their bases and assets and allies in the Middle East get attacked. That's probably the biggest risk America faces, and Trump could have backlash from his base.
That's very important. For those people who care about what's happening in Ukraine, this is brilliant for Ukraine because Iran has been one of the biggest suppliers of drones, the suicide drones that have been raining down in Ukrainian cities and killing civilians and military personnel there. The fact that Iran and Russia are now having to deal with this situation takes a lot of pressure off Ukraine, and it's good for that reason as well.
All right, Dave, the one thing I would quibble with about what you said earlier was about the way that Iran has responded. They always threaten annihilation when they get attacked, right? Or when they're involved in any kind of skirmish. We've heard it towards the end of last year, and nothing really happened. We've heard it again now. And although, yes, they've got through the Iron Dome several times, they've killed some civilians in Tel Aviv. This is indisputable. So they technically have done better in terms of their revenge attack than other countries have fared against Israel. I accept that. But I also think we are far removed from seeing any kind of huge resistance coming out of Iran. In fact, what you're seeing is their bluff potentially getting called here. That a lot of it has been rhetoric built on sand, literally, and that they don't actually have the military capability to even tackle a country 1/10 its size in terms of population, let alone if the United States was to get involved. So I think what you're seeing is actually the opposite of the way you characterized it. I don't think you're seeing a massive response from Iran. I think you're seeing as good as they can do, and it's not very much.
Well, look, I mean, this is what remains to be seen, and we don't know. But in 2007, when Dick Cheney was trying to push George W. Bush into war with Iran, it was the Pentagon who stopped George W. Bush from doing it. And it was them who said that we do not have escalation dominance over Iran, essentially meaning that we have, we still have thousands of troops in Iraq right now. We have bases and embassies all throughout the region that they can touch. Now, we'll see, I guess, Piers. I guess we're going to play this game. I guess we're going to play this incredibly risky game.
I agree, it's high risk.
For no reason, essentially, from the United States of America's interest. And, look, this stuff, I'm sorry, I just find this to be too ridiculous. All of the intelligence is saying that they don't have nuclear weapons and they're not pursuing nuclear weapons. There is one country, one government in the Middle East that is not a member of the non-proliferation treaties that has nuclear weapons secretly. And it ain't Iran, it's Israel. It is so ridiculous.
Well, I agree, it's absurd. As you know, I agree. I agree. I don't understand how Israel is allowed to continue pretending they don't have nuclear weapons.
But what are you saying? Are you saying Iran should develop nuclear weapons to compensate for that reality?
No. What I'm saying is this, okay? Whenever you guys talk about this, even already, and Piers, I got to say, I thought you were a little bit guilty of this right after October 7th, understandably perhaps so. But even right now, whenever it's all about the Israeli perspective, as if we're all Israelis. Oh, Israel can't take the risk that they have 60% enrichment. Israel can't get this wrong the way I could change my mind about supporting Donald Trump. I guess Israel can get it wrong when they lure America into a war, when they pump out propaganda saying that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. That's okay when they get that one wrong, but they can't get this one wrong. Okay, fine.
Why are you blaming Israel for that? It was your own government lying to us about that. I was protesting against the war in Iraq exactly the same way you and Piers.
I think we all oppose
it. It was our government lying to us. It wasn't about Israel. Why is everything that happens in the world the fault of Israel then?
This is such a blatant straw man. I didn't say everything in the world is the fault of Israel. I'm saying they were also guilty of this.
But why are you putting the emphasis on them when George W. Bush and Tony Blair were using their bully pulpits to make this point to a far wider audience than some guy in the Middle East called Benjamin Netanyahu?
If you think that I am removing any of the blame from George W. Bush or Tony Blair, I assure you you're wrong and you don't know what you're talking about. I've been blasting them for years. They're war criminals who should be in the Hague.
I agree.
That is not the issue. We are talking specifically about the nation.
Interesting. Konstantin thinks, okay. I didn't expect that. He said Tony Blair and Bush are war criminals that should be in the Hague, and he said, I agree. Okay, that's a depth to Konstantin that I did not recognize existed. I thought he was a little bit more neoconservative, but I guess there's a little bit more nuance there.
Of Israel right now, so I'm talking about their responsibility. And why is it, by the way, that this is always a one-way street?
Although in hindsight, it's much easier to say, yeah, I agree, they shouldn't have done it, but what was he saying at the time,
I hear all the hawks constantly being like, Iran said this, Iran threatened this. What about the threats in the other direction? Maybe Iran feels like they don't have a choice. So look, Muammar Gaddafi, Iran is on the list of 7 countries that are supposed to be overthrown. The U.S. government went and overthrew both of their next door neighbors, invaded the countries and destroyed them after putting Iran on the axis of evil list when they had nothing to do with 9/11. And then when Muammar Gaddafi denuclearized, they went in there and overthrew him in the most violent, brutal way, was sodomized to death by a pack of madmen. Maybe Iran also feels that they can't get this one wrong. Why are we doing this?
Was Gaddafi really sodomized to death? Or is he just being hyperbolic? That sounds hyperbolic, right? Whoa. Oh, okay. Yeah. He was likely sodomized with a weapon, a knife or a bayonet shortly after his death. Okay. So they kind of mutilated his body. But I mean, it is true. Iran does have reason to feel threatened by Western powers, without a doubt. I mean, the U.S. has a very clear history of toppling regimes, not only in the Middle East, but all over the world. And I don't know if regime is even the right word. Like a friend gave me feedback yesterday. What's the difference between a regime and a government, right? You could say the non-democratic nature, but generally it's used as propaganda. It's used, if you don't like the government, it's a regime, right? People call the Israeli regime. If you don't like the government, it's a regime. If you like them, it's a government. So maybe it's proper to just use more neutral terms and just call them governments. So the U.S. has toppled many governments throughout the years. So Iran does have a reason to feel threatened.
This is a country that poses no threat to the United States of America. And if you guys want to try to hang on the fence here and go, hey, I'm not telling Americans what to do, I think Israel should do it on their own. But that's just a fantasy land. They're not doing it on their own. They're doing it with our weapons, with our intelligence support, with our money, with us protecting them from a retaliation strike, and at least possibly with our president using negotiations to dupe Iran into thinking that they weren't at risk. I mean, that's what Benjamin Netanyahu says, and that's what some other reporting says. Maybe that's not the case, but either way, he pretended like he was afterward. So no, none of this is being done without America. This is about a regime change war. All of them said it in their own words. They're on record. Do you guys think Benjamin Netanyahu has been mistaken for 30 years, claiming that Iran is a year to 3 years away from a nuke? Or was he lying?
Well, I think, listen, I think the reality is the thing that struck me was going from 3% to 60% suggests an intent. It suggests an incontrovertible. But no one disputes.
Not the only country that does this.
But nobody disputes that Iran has gone from 3% to 60% in uranium enrichment, right? So that is all. Unlike with Saddam and the WMD that didn't exist, that is indisputable. It's just how you interpret what they're intending to do.
Yeah, I mean, they did go from 3 to 60, but you need 90. So like the sign of them weaponizing is them going to 90, and then you also need evidence of them being able to weaponize it, right? So 60 is certainly risky, but it's not certain that that's them building a bomb.
Do with that. And let me ask you.
Can I just one quick thing on this? So first of all those regime wars you're talking about are the fault of the US and other Western governments who pursued them. That's who's responsible. That's who should be to blame, and as you say, should be prosecuted for that. But the reason people rightly call you a moral relativist, Dave, is that you don't seem to understand the difference between, yes, I think it's quite clear that Benjamin Netanyahu wants regime change in Iran, but that is not the same as the regime in Iran wanting to destroy Israel. There's a big difference. If the mullahs in Iran wanted a different prime minister of Israel, that is not the same as wanting to destroy their entire country. And the reason Israel is as paranoid about these things as it is, let's be honest, it's surrounded, or at least was until recently when opinion in many Arab countries changed towards Israel, thanks to President Trump's Abraham Accords. Israel was surrounded by many, many countries who don't believe that it has a right to exist. And that's the difference. And that's why people call you a moral relativist.
Well, okay, well, that's totally ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Why?
It only works. I'm about to answer, Konstantin. Let me finish. Because it only makes sense when you only say, I ascribe the worst of intentions to this regime and the best of intentions to this. What was overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi? Was that simply replacing the leader, or was that destroying the country, turning it into a failed state?
You brought in a different conflict. Let's stick to Israel and Iran. No. The Israelis say we want regime change. The Iranians say we want to wipe you off the map. That's pretty different.
Hold on. So I'm the moral relativist.
Yes.
And when I point out what one side actually did, you run away from it and say, oh, no, we can't talk about that.
It's your government that destroyed Libya. It's not Israel. It's your government.
About this? Israel was lobbying for us to do this for
years.
Who
made the decision to do that?
Our government.
Yes,
and I hold them
exactly.
responsible.
So blame them.
Yes, Konstantin, why are you an Israeli? Why are you constantly running cover for them?
Because I believe in speaking the truth and being honest instead of dragging in stuff that's irrelevant.
No. It's not irrelevant at all. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's not irrelevant. If the U.S. did it, but Israel was lobbying for it, I mean, that's still something worth talking about for sure.
Yes, my government is criminally responsible for the war that they launched. And the Israeli government is also responsible for constantly trying to lure my government into more wars. That's what I'm standing up against right now.
So the American government is so gullible that they just go around invading countries on the say-so of Israel.
Again, what a straw man, dude. Benjamin Netanyahu came to America in 2002 and testified before Congress that the U.S. should overthrow Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, and the Iranian regime. This isn't a secret. He's advocating that we fight more wars. And I'm telling you that this war, which we do not need to fight, which is not in our interest, has the potential to be devastating to our country, let alone the region. What is the moral relativism in any of that?
I explained to you what moral relativism is. One side wants to wipe the other one from the map. The other side wants not to have people who want to do that in charge of that country.
But
that's the difference.
Pierce, do you not get my, let me just see, Pierce, do you get my point here? This is what they said from the very beginning of the war in Gaza. Israel doesn't want to wipe Gaza off the map. Israel just wants to retrieve the hostages and get it, but they are wiping it off the map. So why do you just get to have this standard where you decide what they want to do? I can't base it on their track record. We can't look at Iraq. We can't look at Libya. We can't look at Afghanistan. Evidently, as all the hawks see, we can look at World War II. Everything is just like World War II, but it's not like the last 25 years.
And you know, it's not that. Also, the framing is a little bit deceptive, right? So Iran's saying they want to wipe Israel off the map, and they're just saying they want to topple the regime. But these are not all too different if you think about it. Like, if Iran successfully topples the Zionist regime, and then you have Israel being a secular democratic state, that's not, at that point, they don't want to wipe it off the map. So they both do want to fundamentally change the nature of the governance of the land in a way that it's not all too fundamentally different. What you could say is that Iran wants, like, if you want to go further and say they also want to kill all the Jews living on the land or ethnically cleanse them, then it's no longer comparable, because that's not Israel's intention with Iran. But from the quotes, and maybe somebody could counter this if they see if they can find a different interpretation or a different quote. But I don't think Iran talks about harming the Jews or ethnically cleansing the Jews. I think they generally talk about the Israeli regime, the Zionist regime in its current form. So there are some subtle differences, but it's not a completely different example. Not completely different.
No, wipes countries off the map left and right.
Well, as you know,
I've done it for track record.
Yeah, as you know, I've been increasingly critical of the Israel strategy in Gaza. It makes no sense until you hear people like Smodrich talking brazenly and openly about ethnic cleansing. I mean, it doesn't make any pretense. And at that point, I do think that there are certainly people on that in that government at senior level who absolutely want to get all the Palestinians out of Gaza, out of the West Bank. And if that has been their plan all along from October the 8th, then I was duped, and people that feared that were correct. And we'll have to see how that plays itself out. I hope that is not going to actually be the case. And the people who say from the Israeli side, they say to me, well, Smodrich isn't the government. Well, he's a pretty senior member of that government, and he's not even hiding what he thinks should be happening. Before we finish this, guys, I want to talk about the politics here for Trump as well, because it's really interesting to me. Konstantin, you've got the conservative right in America absolutely split down the middle. You've got Tucker Carlson on one side, a lot of people who agree with him that this could be a disaster for America, for Trump. They shouldn't be doing it. Obviously, Dave and Tucker Carlson, now unusual bedfellows on this, but there's always a first time for everything. But you also have a lot of people on the conservative right, Lindsey Graham, John Bolton, others who are absolutely gung-ho to get stuck into Iran here. Is there a danger that politically this really does fragment Trump's base support? And what does that mean for the Republicans, for MAGA, for Trump, for the future, for J.D. Vance and people who are aligned with Trump maybe at the next election and so on?
Well, I should preface this by saying I'm an outside observer in the United States. I do go there a lot. I spend a lot of time there. I speak to people there, but I certainly wouldn't claim to be, the greatest expert in the world about what's happening in America. My sense, unexpert sense of this, is that actually I think your presentation of it is a very online-focused presentation. I think if you look at the polling, the vast majority of people in America are basically in the position I described earlier, which is they don't want Iran to get anywhere near or continue to get closer to developing nuclear weapons, and they don't want American boots on the ground. And that's the dilemma that Donald Trump has to navigate. And if you can do that...
Well, there's a third dilemma. So this is where it gets more complicated, because I don't think he's even thinking about boots on the ground. But I do think he is thinking, probably as we speak, about whether he allows an American B-52 to take a 30,000-pound bomb and drop it on the nuclear sites, which Israel hasn't got the ability to get to. Yeah. I think that is probably more likely than not right now.
So let's be honest,
what he may order.
If that happens and it's successful and it doesn't lead to an escalation, everyone's going to love it because Americans love to win and they love to bomb shit, right? Let's be honest, that's the history of the last 20 years. And if that happens, they'll be very happy. And if it goes in a different direction, they will be very happy. So you're right, it's a big call. I don't think anyone sitting here, or frankly anywhere, knows how it's actually going to play out or whether it's a good idea. And I'm not sitting here advocating for that necessarily. I think Israel seems to be doing enough damage to significantly degrade any attempts Iran is making to have a nuclear enrichment program. And I hope that's the thing that we pursue. By the way, I don't think it's split MAGA down the middle at all. That's what it appears like on X. I really don't think when you talk to ordinary people that's the situation in America, especially in the Republican Party, which is overwhelmingly pro-Israel and has been for a very long time.
Okay, Dave Smith.
There's no question. I mean, I largely agree with Konstantin there. I think if Trump can thread the needle here and not lead to a catastrophe, that he can survive this politically. I do think he's downplaying the split a little bit. Again, it's not just about like polls about how people feel about boots on the ground, which obviously the American people are largely opposed to. And yes, it is true that most of the Republicans do support Israel, although poll after poll has demonstrated that this is really changing with the younger generation. But look, I mean, you have a situation right now. And, yesterday, I started the day by denouncing Donald Trump, and I was, trending on Twitter and getting a lot of praise and a lot of insults and all that stuff. But by the end of the day, it was like Tucker Carlson was being insulted by Donald Trump for not even criticizing him, really just criticizing the policy while heaping praise on Donald Trump. But Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, I mean, some of the most influential conservative voices in the United States of America have all come out and really drawn a red line that we do not want to have another war here. So the point is that if it does get to that, and that's a big if, but if it does come to that point, like a real boots on the ground war, Donald Trump will absolutely destroy his coalition and his legacy along with it, as well as his entire domestic agenda. I mean, you need as much political capital.
Yeah, that's true, but that's so unlikely to happen.
As you can get when there's people out on the streets protesting against his immigration policies, and he's risking squandering all of this for something that's absolutely no threat to the United States of America at all, on the side of the country who secretly developed nukes and is not in the non-proliferation treaty, against the country who doesn't have nukes and is in the non-proliferation treaty. It's the most reckless madness a policy could possibly be.
Well, he's not pursuing that policy. This is what the point I keep making to Dave. What you keep doing, Dave, is taking to the extremist position. No one's talking about boots on the ground except the usual Lindsey Grahams, who no one in the Trump cabinet takes seriously on these issues at all.
I don't know about that.
They don't. The conversation that's happening is about what is the right level of America's involvement. We will see what that is. And by the way, look, I haven't seen Charlie Kirk, who is genuinely influential, I think, within the MAGA movement, criticize President Trump. I think he's been kind of balanced in his commentary. All the other people, the Candace Owens, the Tucker Carlsons, etc., the vast majority of people within the conservative movement in America are not taking their opinion on this issue, and the polls bear that out.
Tucker, though,
I would say
Tucker, I think, is a significant voice.
Huge audiences.
Well, I'm not saying they don't have huge audiences, but I'm saying a lot of those audiences are not within the conservative movement.
Right, but when Tucker chewed up Ted Cruz, for example, and did it pretty skillfully, I have to say, made Cruz look pretty ill-informed about Iran. that's got a massive amount of mainstream media attention today. Yeah, I think that you can't ignore. I mean, it's interesting to me. Look at the split. Is that the MAGA names against Trump: Candace Owens, you, Dave, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex Jones, Matt Walsh, Tucker Carlson. Obviously, then you got the ones for Charlie Kirk's been pretty balanced, like you said, Lindsey Graham, Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Mark Levine. I mean, I've not seen that kind of split on many issues, and this is potentially the biggest issue of all.
Can I just responding to what Konstantin just said, because I thought I made this point pretty clear at the beginning, but let me try to make it clear. You can sit here and say nobody's talking about boots on the ground all you want to. This whole thing is about a regime change, and all of the major players have admitted this in their own words. Even Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't saying that Iran was on the cusp of having nuclear weapons.
That could be regime change. But that could be regime change, as we saw in Syria towards the end of last year in December, when after a long and bloody and awful civil war, suddenly the downfall of Assad happened incredibly quickly, and it didn't involve boots on the ground in any conventional sense. It involved actual Syrian boots from civilians.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, but I mean, this is very different because you had like an opposition. You had like an opposition that was very strong that almost defeated Assad in the prior decade, and then came over out of the blue. And we still don't know exactly what happened, how Assad's army collapsed so quickly. But in Iran, I mean, the most likely alternative to the current government is the IRGC. I mean, the Revolutionary Guard. It'll be like a military coup of sorts. That's not like a completely different government that would currently exists. The opposition in Syria, it's also debatable who's going to be ultimately better, Assad or al-Julani. But here, the most likely alternative is not vastly different from the current government.
And they were able to test. And that's why I see, I don't think it can be ruled out that if enough Iranian...
And one more point. If you want to do regime change where the IRCG doesn't take over, then you need boots on the ground. You can't airstrike the Revolutionary Guard into non-existence. That's just not going to work. You would need boots on the ground. It would take many years. But I don't think that's what people are talking about. They think they could just topple the Ayatollah and take out enough mullahs, and then have, like, people are talking about like Reza coming in and coming in leading. That's the crown prince. But who's going to allow that? That's just not so implausible.
People feel that their regime has been humiliated, has actually been exposed for not being able to hit back in the way they've always vowed to, feel that they're weak and disgraced and so on. Why couldn't there be an uprising like we saw in Syria at the end of last year? I don't think it can be ruled out.
Well, I mean, listen. So Piers, just to be clear, because you are right about that. There are the models like Libya and Syria where it didn't require long occupations and nation building, and all you got was a failed state with open-air slave markets, a massive refugee crisis into Europe, and now you have Al-Qaeda in charge of Syria. And excuse me, as an American, my beef is with Al-Qaeda, not
but
with Hezbollah.
He is not behaving like a member of Al-Qaeda. Now he's a leader of the country. He appears to be.
Oh, so that's okay.
I'm not taking anything.
All right.
Here I disagree with Dave. It is Al-Qaeda, but I mean, this is just how it works. Terrorists turn statesmen. I mean, the history is filled with such instances. And this should give us hope about the leader of a Palestinian state could be ex-Hamas. Like, that's just possible. We need to accept that.
I'm not.
Some of the first leaders of Israel engaged in terrorism, I mean, arguably every single prime minister engaged in some form of terrorism. We just call it war because it's with the military.
I don't take any, as Donald Trump once says, I don't trust anyone, right? So let's see.
I'm not saying trust.
Let's see how it plays out.
Here. Hold on, Piers. I'm not saying trust. This man was fighting agast America in the
Iraq
War,
I know his
part
history.
of the insurgents, killing our boys.
I know,
so why am I supposed to care about?
No, but then Nelson Mandela.
Nelson
Mandela was on the UK's prescribed terrorist list under Margaret Thatcher.
Wait, I mean, it's interesting that this is so. Why is he holding it against Al-Qaeda? That in Iraq specifically, not that same Al-Qaeda that attacked the World Trade Center, but Al-Qaeda in Iraq that's like an anti-imperialist insurgency. That was an illegal invasion. That was Western troops in foreign land toppling the government. I think they have a right to fight that. Like, am I endorsing it? No, but that's not terrorism. That's counterinsurgency. Or well, technically you could consider it insurgency or a counterinsurgency, but yeah, I don't think that's like testament to them being bad or evil. I think that's what happens when you invade a country. People take up arms.
And went on to become one of the greatest people in history and led his country to a more unified place. In other words, Trump is taking a bet that this new leader in Syria actually is a reformed character. And certainly so far, you would have to say that the signs are reasonably encouraging, given the apocalyptic feelings that some people had, that he would simply be Mr. Al-Qaeda presiding over complete mayhem.
And one thing is worth adding, by the way, on this, is that Iran has a history. Iran, just a quick point, Dave, very quick. Iran has a history of 25 years or maybe 26 years of living in a secular and relatively liberal free society. So the people of Persia have a very different history to the countries you're talking about. This is not to say that regime change or the change of a regime does not lead to catastrophe. I mean, and
there's no obvious, I mean, someone wrote a very good piece about this week. There is no obvious savior waiting in the wings other than the Shah's son, who is a quite divisive character. I've interviewed him, I like him personally, but divisive character. But there's no like Mandela figure that you could point to and say is waiting in the wings to potentially come and rescue Iran. That person so far hasn't been identified.
Can I just make a couple quick points on this? Okay, so like number one,
I don't know why people are making this whole thing about him. I don't even see how you get him in power with the Revolutionary Guard. Maybe I'm not seeing something here, but I think people are just dreaming with this vision.
We launched 25 years of what they are dubbed forever wars on the justification that Al-Qaeda came over here and murdered innocent American citizens. And now I'm supposed to make up with Al-Qaeda and forgive them for that because he put on a three-piece suit while I focus on Israel's enemies. I just find this to be like...
Yeah, so again, there's a difference between bin Laden's Al-Qaeda that engaged in a horrific terror attack that there's absolutely no justification for, even their excuse that it's like U.S. involvement in the Middle East, which you could object to, but I mean, there's no justification for taking down the towers like that. But Al-Qaeda in Iraq was very much born in response to the U.S. invasion. So you can't look at those in the same moral light. They're quite different.
A crazy ask of the American people. And then, look, it's real easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, they had a strong tradition of liberalism and everything's going to work out this time. For the first time, we're going to have a regime change that's going to work out really smoothly. Iran is so weak. The people hate them so much. This regime has been in power since 1979, spending the vast majority of that time having the most powerful governments in the history of the world, hell-bent on ousting this regime. And they've survived this long. Maybe you guys are right this time. But Piers, come on, man. I mean, you remember the mission accomplished banners. You remember when they had the first elections in Iraq and it even fooled Jon Stewart and he was celebrating, oh, I guess George W. Bush was right. And then we went on to the most brutal and bloody 8 years of civil war that saw 1 million innocent people die. The country absolutely destroyed, massive displacement.
1 million is the highest possible estimate. It's probably a little bit lower. I mean, if you take all the estimates, the average of all the estimates is lower. So yeah, 1 million might be a little overexaggerated, but yeah, it was horrific. Hundreds of thousands at least. And a significant portion of those were actually indirect deaths because the healthcare system collapsed with the U.S. invasion. Yeah, but okay.
And horror stories. And so, it's like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, and maybe it'll make you a little bit uncomfortable, but the amount of people celebrating this thing 4 or 5 days into it, like, oh my God, Israel took out all their targets. Look how easy it was. We've been here before. I've seen this movie.
I'll be honest with you, Dave, as someone who's not pushing regime change or American involvement, as I've said, in the way that you think people are trying to do, I am celebrating the fact that Iran is no longer enriching uranium to 60%. I think that is worth celebrating. I think that's a good thing. I think we should all be relieved that that's happening.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but I also agree with Dave Smith when he says this could go horribly wrong.
But that's what we're all saying. I'm saying that too.
Yeah, I agree.
This is war. Like, no one knows how it's going to turn out exactly.
I agree. I mean, I've gone as far as saying I think that unlike the Iraq War in 2003, I feel like this seems a justified action by Israel to protect its people from what is clear fast-moving acceleration of uranium by a lethal enemy that is wedded to terror groups all over its border that want to kill it. I understand that. It seems justified. Now, does that mean I think it's going to work and isn't going to cause huge problems? No. And I think the jury is very firmly out on that. And it's going to be an extremely fascinating and turbulent few weeks and months ahead. And I think right now, Donald Trump, probably the loneliest man in the world, sitting in the White House, working out what does he actually do now. And if he does press the button on attacking Iran, that will go really against pretty much everything he said, other than specifically Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. In terms of starting a war in the Middle East, that is really antithetical against everything he's said he stands for. So it's a really interesting, momentous decision for Donald Trump to be taking, and the consequences could be enormous. But gentlemen, I've really enjoyed this debate. Thank you both for agreeing to do it. I think it was constructed in the right tone. We didn't descend into ad hominem attacks.
Can I just say, I have a much bigger penis than you, Piers, and you, Dave.
That's actually almost certainly not true.
We will leave the Galloway episode yesterday.
And Dave Smith, we all know, is the most well hung of the three of us. So why don't we just leave it with Dave Smith for the win?
That was a nice, fun way to wrap it up. Okay. So that was a much more balanced debate than the other ones we reviewed in recent times. I think that Dave's essential point is not so strong, that there's this great fear that it's boots on the ground and massive U.S. involvement. I think that's probably overblown. Where I think he's right is that it's not so obvious that this is the right decision to make. It's not so obvious that it's going to play out in our favor, and it's toppling, destabilizing Iran might be just absolutely horrific for the Iranian people for the next who knows how long. So I thought he did well on those points, but I thought his central point is not the strongest, because it doesn't seem all too relevant or feasible to happen. Anyways, we'll do some Q&A. If someone from Discord wants to hop on and share thoughts and ask questions, you're welcome to. Just raise your hand. For those who aren't in Discord yet, you should definitely join our Discord. We're doing conversations there every day, voice and text conversation. I just dropped the link. We'll do some Q&A, prioritize super chats if anyone wants to toss one over. So we had some questions. Fahad says, any information about the Jewish minority in Iran? No, I don't, but there's, is it like 10,000? How many Jews in Iran? They're mostly religious, from what I understand. It's like an ultra-Orthodox community, like a Hasidic community, like the Black Hatters. Yeah, 8,000 to 15,000. And supposedly they are... I hear their life there is like complicated. I don't know. I'm not well informed enough about this, but yeah, 8 to 15,000 is the number that's being estimated. So Ellie, you asked me the worst case of backfiring. Yeah. So in a situation where Israel and potentially the United States aren't able to entirely destroy everything, right? It seems like serious damage was caused to the enrichment facility, but we don't have any information about their stock of enriched uranium, if that's been touched. That very well might still be intact. It's possible you'll have a few more weeks of bombing. We set back their ability to enrich, but that might just cause them to be like, you know what? We now need to do everything in our power to actually build a nuke. Like this might cause them to do it, because it's the greatest deterrent, right? So we see that threatening to build a nuke or getting close to build a nuke is not a deterrent. It's the opposite. It invites in conflict. But if the second they cross that line and have one, the assumption is that there's a level of protection that they then have. So this very well may happen. We don't know if we could knock out the Fordow plant. We don't even know if the B-52 bomber could do that. It's speculative. It might, but that's also unclear. So we might just really be poking the bear and then ending it, and the bear is going to come get us. But again, I don't think Iran has an interest in nuking Israel. Like, that's suicide, right? You do have a lot of pretty crazy people with, is the Iranian government more extreme than the Pakistani government? They're definitely not more extreme than the North Korean government, right? Nukes, it's interesting because nukes pose an existential threat, right? Nuclear war poses an existential threat, but it also makes the world more peaceful in a certain way. It's almost like it makes the world more peaceful until it doesn't. But countries that have nukes are much less likely to engage in direct battle because of how dangerous it is. So it's interesting. It makes the world safer until the day it will destroy the world. And then there's giving a dirty bomb to a proxy, and I don't know all too much about that, but I know that's another concern, that they don't need to nuke Israel themselves. They could pass something over to Hezbollah and then they could use it. Ellie said, well, I say there's a greater than 0% chance they would nuke Israel. Yeah, for sure. Definitely greater than 0. But less than 10%, right? So in between 0 and 10, probably I would even say even 10% is high. But a lot of this also depends on how things progress in the world. Do they feel threatened? Do they feel an existential threat? How do people act when their back is against the wall? I think it's a non-zero chance that Israel uses a nuke as well, right? You know, Israel, if they feel threatened enough, are capable of using a nuke. I wouldn't put that past them. Yeah. So yeah, to me, it's very unclear that this is going to decrease the chance that they build nuclear weapons. And then there's another argument, and I know this isn't convincing at all the Israelis, understandably, but it's like, even if they are planning on building a nuke, that is their right, you know? If Israel has nukes, if other countries have nukes, why can't they? They're a sovereign country. But that doesn't fly for Israel, you know, because they have shared their desire. Again, they've never explicitly said we will wipe Israel off the face of the earth, but they have called for the end of the Zionist regime. I understand the fear amongst Israelis for a country saying that, obtaining nuclear weapons. Harry Potter says they won't nuke because it's a religious place for Muslims also. What about Tel Aviv, though? You know, like nuking Jerusalem, maybe not, but Tel Aviv. Fahad, you asked. Fahad, are you still here, by the way? I hope you're. You asked, do you have a shelter where you are, or are you like Gazans, leaving it to destiny and luck? So right now I am in Herzliya on my dad's boat, the boat that he lives on. There's no shelter here. He goes across the street into like a publicly available shelter. The past week or so, I've been in the north where I do have a mamad. There's two concepts. There's mamad and miklat. Mamad is like a room in your home that's secure. Miklat is like a public shelter for people to go into. So I do have a secure room in my house. I haven't been going in just because the area I live, even though there have been sirens, it's very low risk of falling in that area. And again, I've said this many times on stream, but sheltering is a very good national policy because it saves lives, but assessing your own individual risk, you're changing your chance of survival from, I'm just throwing out numbers, but this is how the math would work, something along these lines. It's anytime there's sirens, you have a 0.00001% chance of dying. So here, if you don't go to shelter, it's a 0.0. Like it's a very negligible. It's like 0.001 or 0.0002. So that's really the difference. So when you assess your personal risk, it's like, okay, should you go in a shelter? But when everybody, right, that difference in odds times 7 million people clearly makes a difference. I'm sure some math person would have been able to explain that better, but that's yeah. PN saying they both live in Isfahan, which was recently bombed, by the way. This is regarding the Jews in Iran. Interesting. I wonder what their sentiment on this is. That'd be fascinating to get an Iranian Jew on who lives in Iran, not like a Persian Jew from LA. Huh. How do we find one? We should. Let's try to find one. Alex is saying the shelter story may not be correct. FYI. What's that in reference to? Not sure I understand. Sen says it's all hypothetical because Israel has spent decades trying to erase Palestine from the map. We could consider the PNAC clean break strategy to balkanize the entire Middle East. Yeah, I mean, that is true, right? Like, with all the threats Iran's made, Israel in practice is wiping another nation. I mean, how do you explain this in simple terms? It's true. The hope of Palestinian sovereignty seems to be decreasing as settlements expand and more land is taken. That is true. That is, I don't want to say wiping a nation off the face of the earth, because the nation still exists, but that nation, that people's ability to be sovereign, is very much something Israel has stopped from happening. Greg Uretsky says North Korea is very much different. Iran is a fundamental Islamic regime. But I mean, there's many ways to be fundamentalist. That doesn't need to be Islamic. North Korea is also fundamentalist in their own way, arguably more so. This also is a conversation I had with a friend yesterday, and I said this on stream, and he kind of pointed out, and he did convince me. I don't think we have evidence that Islamic or religious regimes act less rational than secular ones. I don't think that's clearly present in evidence. I think there's instances where they don't act rationally and instances where they do, but you look through history, I mean, Israel and the United States act irrationally often, you know? So I don't think it's that obvious. At the end of the day, people are more alike than they are different, and they respond to incentives, and you generally don't run a government purely because you know a religion well. You need to be a statesman. You need to understand politics. You need to know how to govern. So even the mullahs, they're not sheikhs, they're not imams. They govern. So it's unclear how differently than they act, and it's unclear that they're less rational than many other secular countries. And certainly I don't think it's at all obvious that they're more dangerous than North Korea. I don't know. But I do think probably the threat of North Korea is probably also overblown. I don't even see, like, what are we even fighting North Korea for? I feel like that's a pretty solvable conflict. I don't think it's solvable to unify North and South Korea. That's probably a little bit more challenging because it would require a massive change in governance. But I don't see why the U.S. has sanctions on North Korea. That doesn't seem at all necessary. Why are there people suffering because of U.S. sanctions, right? What does that benefit us? What do we gain from those sanctions? Harry Potter says, I'll find an Iranian Jew for you, bro. Cool, yeah, please do. Iran actually does have members in the parliament from Christian, Jewish, and Zoroastrian communities. Interesting. PN says, because South Korea is our ally in the U.S. Yeah, but I mean, again, great, they should be our ally. Should we sanction North Korea? Like, why are we sanctioning Cuba? Like, what? Guys, Cuba's not a threat. There's no reason to do that. And you have so much more leverage over a country once you have a relationship with them, once you have trade with them and allyship with them. We should be building these alliances across the board. Like, that's just how we should be looking at it. Opening up the world to each other, not the sanctions, inviting people in and then incentivizing them to reform in areas where we feel like they should reform. And I don't buy it that if they're not human rights abuses, so we can't be their allies. No, the U.S. is allies with many countries that have committed human rights abuses. I mean, does Iran commit worse human rights abuses to their own people than Saudi Arabia does to their own people? I don't think that's obvious. U.S. sanctions 100 countries. Is that true, PN? Let's see. A list of countries. Let's see. Primary country with comprehensive U.S. sanctions, financial investment restrictions enforced by OPEC, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, Syria, Venezuela. Additionally, several other countries are subject to sectoral or targeted sanctions, typically prohibiting specific transactions, military exports, or applying individual entities under U.S. legal authority. Belarus, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Mali, Nicaragua, Somalia, South Sudan, Yemen, Zimbabwe. I mean, military exports make sense. That's a responsible decision to say we're not going to sell weapons if those weapons are used for human rights abuses. But I mean, how do you justify arming Israel then, right? Okay, so it's like a dozen or so different types of sanctions. According to a 2024 analysis, by the Washington Post, 60% of low-income countries were under some form of U.S. financial sanctions. PN says they used to sanction most Central and South American countries at some point too. Yeah, okay. We'll do like maybe 10 more minutes, and then it'll be midnight, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, that sounds about right. Does anybody on Discord want to hop on? Levy, good to see you here on Discord. I see you just joined. Glad you made it over. So, someone said they wanted me to review the Ted Cruz Tucker Carlson debate, but I feel like that the hype on that ship may have sailed. I feel like if I do it, I would need to do it tomorrow. Or should I just bang it out right now? That'd be wild. Let's see how long it is. Nah, 2 hours. Definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, Fahad, Max Blumenthal was recently in Iran. You saw him visiting the Jews. Interesting. Okay. PN saying it's so bad that it's not even worth going through it. Okay, maybe that I'll just, yeah. That ship has sailed. Next. There'll always be more cringe content to review. So now that I've been streaming more, I'm thinking of like changing the content strategy. I don't know how other streamers do it, but it seems like what a lot of them do, and maybe somebody who's more in the streamer world can tell me. It seems like a lot of them, they'll do a live stream and then they'll remove it and just upload the best segments. Do you all think that's like a good strategy? I don't know if that's only something that's a good strategy at like a larger scale. Like at this size, is it just better to just do a live stream? And then we have somebody helping. He does some clips. You'll see there's some shorts and stuff that we have. I hire somebody to help with that. But I wonder if there's a more effective strategy for how to run this channel and get different content and messages out there. Dave Pendre says, are you asking Ori? Yeah, I need to get Ori, what's his name, on. I messaged him the other day. Ori Goldberg. Yeah, I'll try to get him on sometime next week. Here's analysis of the situation. I like Ori. He gives good commentary. Fahed says some nudity should work. What's that in reference to? Oh, in terms of getting views up, some nudity? Should I create an OnlyFans? You know, I'm definitely going to offend people with this comment, but in OnlyFans where it's like content with Israeli-Palestinian type of content on OnlyFans could be viral as fuck, huh? People would pay top dollar for that. Carl Thompson says, bro, you seen iShow Speed videos where he reacts to clips? I think that will be great. Well, like, but he doesn't do political commentary, like just regular clips. Can you, Carl, can you send me an example of a kind of clip he reviews? And we'll do one of those as long as it's not too long. I want to see what you're talking about. Do I have interest in reviewing just random clips? I mean, I see some streamers just chill there all day, you know, as long as I have free time. I really like, I've always enjoyed streaming, but as of the past week or so when I've been doing it more, I'm falling more in love with it, interestingly. But like, I could really just, like, for example, sometimes like reviewing a video is one thing, but then there's just like living life on stream. Doing clips would let you drip feed the algo and you get more chances to show up in the right. That's like shortening it smaller, but like, for example, who do I see? Destiny. Sometimes he's live streaming, and then I'll see sometimes he'll upload a video from his live stream, and then the live stream no longer exists. So I think he live streams, then removes it, and then right, and then he just uploads the best moments. So maybe I need to get the editor to do stuff like that. Bro, like Discord members I chat will send videos and you react to them. All right, send me something. Let's see. You know, I like playing chess. So what if we do like, what if we here? Hold on. What if we just play chess on stream? Damn, you know, I almost wish. What's my score right now? Okay, 912. I kind of wish I was over 1,000 at this point so I could flex on y'all. I don't know if that's even considered good. This guy's, is that Egypt? Yeah. Let's hit him with Egypt. They say Alan Wasalan, right? Wasalan. I feel like that's Ahalan. Is the H before the? Yeah, the H is before, right? Yeah. Halan. I hope. Okay. I don't have. I no longer have the Israeli flag here. I have the international flag. But because what would happen, I'd always play Middle Easterners, and they'd leave right away when they saw the Israeli flag. So I changed it to international. Look, little Egyptian sent me a kiss. But if he knows I'm doing this from Israel, how would you feel about it? Should I tell him? Can one of the Arab viewers give me some Arabic stuff that I could say to our guy right here? What do I even do right now? And whoever here plays chess, add me. It's my name on chess.com. Let's get some games going, you know? I think that was actually a mistake because now he moves that. I guess you do that. So I think I'm maxed out at chess in terms of I don't know how much better I'm gonna get in this stage of my life unless I learn. I'm kind of like I don't know if this is like an intuitive player, but I don't learn openings and end game and stuff like that. I'm more so just like am seeing what the best move every position is, and sometimes I'm doing one or two moves ahead, but not more than that. Look, he blundered. Yeah, now he needs to do that. Can he save the castle? Not sure. Probably, I think I got him, huh? He might even resign. What do I say to this guy? Kif halak? Is that how are you? I'm learning a little bit Arabic, so we hit him with the how are you? Kif halak. Dollar Store Pinata says, did you do Ahmed Fawad Al-Khatib verse 20? Yeah, I did. And then YouTube removed it for copyright issues, and then they put it back. So on YouTube, there's like 30 minutes of it. On Twitter, though, you could find the whole thing. Go to my Twitter and type, I guess, search on my profile his name, and then it should come up. Oh, he moved. I didn't see that he moved. Okay. He went there. You see, look. If I almost blundered hard because I'm so tempted to eat his castle, but then he would have checkmated me. He's got boom, boom. So now he's got nothing. Tamam. Can somebody tell me what tamam means? I guess good. Anta kif halak. And how are you? I could just say tamam, but that's boring. Yo, Fahed, are you here? I need some Arabic, my brother. Yeah, okay, we got the castle. Now he's gonna castle. Or resign. He might resign. That was smart. He's trying to trap my piece. You see, I can't escape, but I'm not gonna let him trap me. So I don't know if you all know, I've been like seems he speaks English though. Yeah, he does. I'm just having fun with him, you know, just a cultural exchange of sorts. How much blundered again? What's the move here? Interesting. That might not be the best move, but it seems to put some pressure on him. So Andrew Fox and Eisenberg have kind of been my online rivals because they put out all these complete bullshit analyses on the death toll. Oh, he made another mistake. You see, I wasn't able to eat this pawn before because the queen was protecting it, but he blocked the queen. So now I get that pawn. And I've challenged Andrew to both of them to debate on multiple occasions. Their work is such garbage that I know they're not going to debate because it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It's just it's a big nothing burger. It's some of the sloppiest work you can imagine. It's not honest work. It's not good work. But every time somebody says, why don't you debate Adar? Andrew engages in some personal attack. That's the only thing he's got. He's like some insult. So today I upped the ante. I told him, I to the public, I said, if he agrees to debate, we'll decide on some agreed upon judges for a public debate. And if the judges decide that he wins, I'll pay him $10,000. And if I win, I want nothing in return. You got to think that's an offer that why would you refuse if you're if you have any degree of confidence in what you're saying? He's not going to accept it because he knows he's lying to the public. They're a bunch of liars. Anna mabsut katir. I'm very happy. Okay, it's interesting. Mabsut is happy in Hebrew as well, but I guess Anna mabsut katir. Did I spell that correctly? Katir. Thanks, Jad. You know, it's interesting because I imagine we have like these regulars that comment a lot. Hold on, it's much harder playing chess when you're talking. Oh, actually, I think I see a potential checkmate. So I imagine like I know some of the viewers just from the comments, but I imagine there's like the silent viewers that just watch. Either watch and enjoy or some hate watchers or maybe some in between who I've never spoken to. So to those who I've never interacted with, hey, and I guess Jad, I've never seen you really comment. So I guess asking for an Arab speaker, you kind of came out. So good to see you. And another thing, There's an audio version of this that goes up. And I've never heard from any of the audio listeners. We have a pretty good audio listener. So if any of the people listening to this on like Spotify or one of them, shout out to you as well. And I'd love to hear from you at some point also. See, threaten the queen, and now he could block this checkmate, right? He needs to go here or here, and he blocks or here, and he blocks a checkmate. Yeah, okay. But he blundered again. Watch. Wait. No, he could block that. Okay, let's see. I don't think I think this is going to be over soon. Oh, that might have been a blunder. He can eat me now, but then I check him. Oh, I blundered. Fuck. Yeah, damn. I could take his pawn. What's the move here? And I'll just take his pawn. Sophie, okay, so you're an audio listener. Cool. You can get on Twitch now. So yeah, people tell me to go on Twitch. Technically, this is being streamed to Twitch, and we always have one viewer on Twitch, but I don't see how streaming, like, how do you get noticed on Twitch? Here, the algorithm shows me some people. Like, how do you get seen? Is it all through collabs? Like, what's the Twitch strategy? But is that what people do? Do people play chess? All right, I gotta focus because I'm running low on time. Okay, I am up +6, and now he's allowing for a queen sacrifice, which you always want to take if you're up by 6, right? Because being up by 6, if we both have our queens, is not as strong of a lead as being up by 6 when our queens are gone. It kind of creates a bigger disparity. So trade. Now he'll eat that, and now I'm going to start bringing my pawn up. I did blunder, but it's still looking good. So should we tell this Egyptian that I'm Israeli? I almost feel like losing to an Israeli is it's tough, you know? It's tough. Like, you know, sometimes they have the sports games like wrestling and stuff, and there's some Middle Eastern country that won't want to compete against Israel. And the reason that I've heard is that it's losing would cause so much shame. But maybe someone here can tell me if there's something else. I guess he wants to trade pieces, but okay. He kind of got +1 on that, so now it's +5. But still, okay, I pretty much won this unless I really fuck up. Ooh. Interesting. Maybe that. I don't know if that was the right move. He'll get another pawn. It'll be +4, but these pawns are so advanced now that I don't. Huh. Clever. I know what I need to do, I think. But I have 340 because I've been talking, so I gotta. CS, you're saying MMA is a good example. Good example for what exactly? What should I do? MMA commentary? I don't know if I could mix that with this stuff. MMA, as much as I like it, it's violence. You know, I don't want to publicly be promoting that stuff. It's true that it's consensual violence, it's a sport, but you're watching people get brain damage, you know, like, and consuming that, I'm almost certain makes people more violent. When there's a saying, you are what you eat, but it's more so you become what you consume. So if you consume a lot of MMA, I feel like it does something to you. And look, in all honesty, I have consumed a lot of MMA in my life. But I don't know if I'm an example of the norm. So checking viewers. So it seems like, honestly, even now that I'm just shooting the shit, the viewership is still similar. So maybe people actually do enjoy just random commentary. Okay, Levy, you're saying, okay, you also listen on Podbean. Okay, cool to see some of the audio people. I've been wondering who y'all are. How's the audio quality? Because I don't use a mic. So yeah, this is actually a question to all the ones that just do. Actually, I guess it's a question to everybody. When I listen back, the audio sounds good, but I don't have the best ear for that stuff. Do you all think that the audio could improve? Okay, the Egyptian guy asked me Tlab Tani. I think he's asking where I'm from. Is that true? Tlab Tani? Jad, we need you. I could also LLM this. Translate. Oh, want to play again? He's asking if I want to play again. Nah, I don't think so. I'll tell him tomorrow. I can't now, but maybe tomorrow. Oh, they did it in Palestinian Arabic. Interesting. ChatGPT. Oh, I literally just put it in chat here. Whoops. Yeah, he's about to resign. What do you guys say? Should we do one more game against this guy? All right, we'll do one more game. One more game against our Egyptian friend. Right now. Okay, he's putting up a valiant effort. Oh, no, actually, look. Check this out. There's a blunder here. Boom. And now he needs to move that there. And then I do it again. And then I get this piece. Yep, exactly. I also like to, whatever. Okay. Who here plays chess? We got any chess players in the house? Wait, CS, you said check out this clip, but I'm not seeing anything. Did you send me something? I don't know if I could, I don't know if you could send it. Oh, maybe StreamYard doesn't pick up on it. Are you on Discord, CS? Can you send it to me there? I don't know why I agreed to the second game. I'm not feeling motivated right now for this, but whatever. It's funny. His name's Adam, right? It's just Adam. The first name ever, according to the books. Which in Hebrew, person, the word for person is Ben Adam, son of Adam. That's how you say person. Or you could say Adam is also a person. Is Arabic like that as well? Milo, you like chess as well? Let's play sometime. So Fahad, okay, Bani Adam. That's Bani Adam. Oh yeah, that's how you say. Cool. Okay, in Arabic as well. Son of Adam is how you say person. It's cool. It shows how biblical we are. You know. I wonder what the etymology of human is. It's fascinating how similar Arabic and Hebrew is. You know, like I can't understand Arabic, but there's definitely words that are the same. And then, you know, modern Hebrew is a resurrected language, so it took ancient Hebrew, some concepts from like European sentence structure, but also Arabic as well. Like pretty much all our curse words are in Arabic. Hebrew curse words are almost entirely Arabic. Okay, Marley, you play cool. Making some new chess friends here. Threatening my queen, huh? Let's see. If I go there, but then he goes there. Hmm. That's the move. I think. I actually wanted to check my my history, game history. See here, I want to see how well I did.
Nice eye. You found a
Damn.
tactic to grow your lead into a win.
92 is, I mean, extremely high for a game that was that long. Like sometimes I have a very quick, if you checkmate real quick, you could get a 90 plus, but a 92 on a game that was like 30 moves while streaming. Honestly, guys, I might be better when I stream. I might be in like flow state because I'm not paying attention. No, I don't want to start a new game. Where's my last game? What do you mean? Where's my game with her? Adam? Double forfeit. What does that even mean? Okay, whatever. I wasn't feeling motivated about it. Whatever. 92 though. That's fucking wild. All right, we'll do one of these clip reviews that somebody said, and then we'll wrap it up, and then we should. Whoever here is more involved in the streamer world, maybe we'll do a meeting on Discord sometimes next week, and we'll figure out what the best streaming and content strategy is, because I am going to start taking it more seriously. So whoever wants to help with that, not even help with execution. I mean, helping with execution would be great as well, but with ideas and whatnot, message me and we'll set a meeting for next week. Where's okay, CS, you said you sent me a clip, but I don't see it. Maybe I need to open this on YouTube. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, mute. No, CS, I don't see. I don't think you sent me a clip. Oh, interesting. You could set goals. Huh. You could set 10 super chats. Teal or higher. Set a timer. Share how you'll celebrate. Interesting. Maybe we'll do that sometime. You can't do that from StreamYard. I didn't even know you could set goals like this on All right, let's try it. We're going to set a goal of 1 super chat. The lowest amount. Set timer. I'm wrapping it up. How you'll celebrate. We're just testing this. A big thank you. Let's reach that goal. CS, I guess you left, but I'd be down to do the clip before we wrap it if you want to send that. Realmer, what's up? I see you just joined. I guess it's morning for you now. Good morning. Okay, we'll wrap this. For those who want, there's currently a conversation happening on Discord in the chill room. 4-person convo. Realmer, I see you typing, so I'll wait. Just woke up. Yeah, cool. Good morning. Where in Australia do you live? Okay, so for those who still want to engage in some conversation, I'm dropping the link to Discord. It's also in the description. If you're watching this on Twitter, it's in my bio. Click that, and then you'll see a chill room, and then you could listen or chat to others. You're in Sydney. Okay. Australia's high on my list of places to go just so far, but I'll make it out there at some point. I love how Aussies have all these words. You guys make a lot of like your own words, you know? Can't think of any now, but I know y'all do that. Like, what do you call McDonald's? Maccas? Is that what you call them? Maccas? And you have those, let's go, Jad. We hit that goal. Cool. Jad with the $5. I really appreciate that. So what did we say? We reached our goal. We'd celebrate with a big thank you. Thank you, Jad. I need to think of what other celebration ways there are. That could be fun, setting goals and stuff. Fish. So, Jad, I don't know what sound the numbers make, right? When people do Arabic, they use numbers because it makes a sound that they don't have in the English alphabet. But I don't know what a 3, right? So I would read that as Anna fish ma 3 watuit. But I imagine that's not how it's going, right? But I appreciate that, Jad. I am starting to learn a little bit of Arabic now. I'm not good with languages. So we'll see how it goes. Especially a language that's masculine and feminine and different. What's it called? Like you need to change the word when you're talking about a group and when you're talking, it's just a lot of different rules, a lot of different forms of the same word. Probably be pretty hard to pick up, but we'll see. Macas. Thanks for the server boost, Realmer. You know what else I see from some YouTube content? There's a lot of these, the fluffy marshmallows. They got like a good, not even fluffy. They got like a good bounce to them. It's not like the American marshmallows that are a little more pressable. I have had them once at Erewhon in LA. I don't know if y'all know Erewhon. Most expensive chain grocery store ever. It makes Whole Foods seem like a Walmart. But they had them. They're great. But it seems like y'all have a pretty good marshmallow and candy scene. Let's see anything going on Twitter. Okay, let's review one thing. You guys want to see something hilarious? I don't know if y'all get this as well, but do you guys get messages from these catfishing accounts trying to? There's different schemes out there, but you'll get like a message from a hot chick. It's like not to perpetuate stereotype. But actually, you know what? I'll use a country that's not going to perpetuate a stereotype all too much, but like a Filipino dude in his basement trying to get money out of you. Or it could also be, I think a lot of catfishers are also just gay guys, trying to get photos straight men, or just scammers, right? It's either like the motivation is either trying to get money out of you, or someone who's just a little perverted trying to get some photos. And the reason I say gay man, not in a negative sense, it's just that's hard to see a woman doing that, you know, unless she's really undesirable and struggles to, you know, find a man, and then maybe then. But I think most catfishing is done by probably gay men, and the scammers, a lot of them are coming out of East Asia. And you could even understand, you could understand, right? For them, it's like they'll never be as wealthy as a Westerner. So it's like, okay, they'll steal a little bit of money, $10 here, $20 there. It's not going to change my life, but it'll put food on the table. I understand that motivation. I don't endorse that way of life, but I could definitely understand why people do that. If you need to feed your family, I get it. I see the motivation. But like, I get this message from this chick, Emma. I only noticed it today. Huh, wait, am I sharing this? No, hold on. Hi, you popped on my feed and I had to say something. Was hoping to talk with you more. Sad face because I didn't answer. Are you scared of me? Question. Sad face. What you doing? And only today I noticed. I said, hey, what did you have to say? He goes, I don't know, LOL. I just saw your tweets and you seem really interesting, I guess. You have a lot to say and it's all so deep. I mean, the way she talks, it sounds like a chick, right? Like whoever is running this account is definitely knows what they're doing. Thanks. I love how you express yourself. It's like you're speaking straight to my soul or something. Happy to hear that. Yeah, I feel like we vibe on a different level, and I don't know how to explain it. Ha ha. How is this believable to anybody? Like, why would somebody think that this is I guess if you're like lonely and gullible, you might, but like, no shot anybody would ever do this, right? Unless you're like a superstar, right? Or like extremely attractive, you might get women doing this, but this is so uncommon. And then I go, if you feel that way, like we vibe on a different level, you're welcome to video call me to talk more, right? I mean, we vibe on a different level. Let's have a video call. Let's talk. But I do this because I just know that it's not never going to happen. It's a bit soon. I'm not really comfortable. Oh, damn, there's a dog chasing a cat. Oh, and the cat fell in the water. Hold on. I might need to save a cat. Fuck. Yeah, stream, hold on. I might need to fucking take a swim. יש לך לצאת? צריך לקפוץ או... יש לך לצאת? עלה? Hi guys, I'm coming back. Okay, guys. The cat survived. They got her out with the net, but that was crazy. I did not want to take a swim. The water in the marina is definitely dirty from all the boats. So where were we? I say, I'm not comfortable yet. I say, all good. Thanks for understanding. I just need to get to know you a little better. IG, I don't even know what that means. So what's the scam here? So I worked in Web3 and crypto for some years, and I was dealing with scammers all the time. So I would the way I would learn about the scams was play along with them until the moment where you're about to lose your money or your password or something. There's phishing scams. There's all sorts of different types. So I still sometimes do that to understand it. I play along till we get to the catch. And it seems like these hot chicks that message you, what it is they'll tell you, they pretend like they're into you, and then they're like, I have an OnlyFans and I'm looking for somebody to record content with. Maybe we could do it together. And it's like, okay, sure, why not? And then they're like, okay, but can we keep talking on OnlyFans? I feel more comfortable there. And then they send you a link. So it's kind of their way to get you to pay for their OnlyFans with the promise that you could meet up with them and do content together. So that very well might be what this one's doing, but maybe not, because her profile is a little bit different. Meow, born to be a wife, not a feminist. So she's speaking to a specific demographic. This is AI generated. That's not even a real woman. It's not even a real person. And then Raleigh, North Carolina. So yeah, this is, and she has no followers and she's following 48 people. Definitely trying to fucking scam. Sorry about that, guys. My computer died. Oh, interesting. Then it cuts the stream on. Cool. Okay, well, I guess I turn my computer back on to just say bye. For those watching oh, it is back on Twitter now. Okay. The next stream for sure is going to be we'll for sure have one Monday evening Jerusalem time, but maybe I'll also do one on another one this weekend. So see you soon. And if you want to chat before, the place to do that is on Discord. Much love from Herzliya.